For a while, there's been a growing community of people, at least on YouTube, that I know of, around the concept of non-duality. Some people have said, those who are critical of it, I've heard them say that it's a cult or something similar to that. I think that's a little bit, that's a bit of an exaggeration. But there are some issues that I have seen in some of the discussions. Not really issues exactly, but what strikes me is that in certain ways it's almost dogmatic in a sense, because the discussions, these group discussions, they're centered around a word, which is non-duality, and the discussions involve a form of language that is almost identical across those who speak about it. And the words are very, the words are very consistent, and the language, the way the language is structured is very similar, almost identical. There's striking similarities in the language. And one of the similarities is this constant use of the word, of words, apparently, appearing, what's happening, things of this nature. So if you've watched these videos, you'll understand that. And this is pretty normal of a dogmatic or narrative structure. Not to say that the discussions are dogmatic, but I think in some ways the speakers are constraining themselves, probably without realizing it. There are a lot of virtues to these discussions, and they do seem to be helpful to some people. I think some people seem to find the discussions calming. They find it easy to detach from their daily pattern of thinking, and they're able to unwind, so to speak. And I think there are some people who are actually deriving actual benefit, not just like a drug or like a psychosomatic effect. I think at least to some extent. But having said that, I do think the non-duality speakers, I do think I do see some limitations in their language, and I would encourage them to speak more broadly and speak a little bit more about their personal experience, because the personal experience, our experience is so for me, that is where the expansion of consciousness ultimately occurs. And so beyond where the constraints lie, I'll elaborate a little bit more about that. Further, the non-duality discussions, they seem to, and I fully recognize that the non-duality speakers, they say that they're trying to convey something that cannot be conveyed in words, and that it's beyond concept, and I fully get that. That's the ineffable. However, having said that, I don't see them talking about a lot about what is outside of typical standing consciousness. And it's not just that the language is hitting a point of ineffability. The language seems to indicate that the message is that there is nothing beyond normal standing awareness, that this is it. This is all there is. There is nothing outside of this. This is all that there is. This is nothing happening. This is nothing and everything. And this is the ticket. So in my experience with meditation and mystical experiences and things of that nature, what one becomes acutely aware of is that there is this normal waking consciousness, but not only is there that, but there's an entire dimension of awareness that is also here. And it is here, but because we're not aware of it, that's the thing, because we're not aware of it, we're unable to acknowledge it. So it's not just a matter of, this is key, it's not just a matter of eliminating the shroud of thinking. It's not just doing that. There is an entire dimension that is accessible. And this is where not an objection, my perception of the limitations of the non-duality message, that's where it comes in. I see that there is a limitation. There is so much more to our consciousness that the non-duality discussion gives credit to and simply doesn't point to at all. It is important I do acknowledge that for most people, especially those who are just beginning to dip their toes into non-duality, getting past the layers of thinking is, for many of them, that's the biggest hurdle. I mean, that for almost all of us, that's the biggest hurdle. And the non-duality discussions, they do address that in a lot of ways. The discussions they're not even really discussions. It's sort of a stream of consciousness dialogue coming out of the speaker. And it's effective in its own way. What it's doing is it's continuously cutting off the tail of thinking, and so it's like there's just nothing to think about, because every single word and phrase is designed to halt itself. And so they're not really talking about anything, and that's intentional. So it is effective in its own way, but it has a limitation. I think it is possible to help people awaken with these kinds of discussions, but I think we need to go further than that. I do at least see that there are some people who that are interested in more of the experiential aspect, that is not so, it's not so easy to deliver in a discussion. So when we're watching YouTube videos, for instance, it's difficult to deliver. It's difficult to deliver someone a mystical experience of oneness. And that's just the nature of it. So that's why ultimately in these videos we have to say things like, eventually you just have to press stop and experience oneness for yourself. I do see that there is value and utility in the discussions. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. There is a transmission. Some people say it's an energetic transmission, which it is. But for me, it's all experiential. And what I would like to do is to encourage people to, I'm going to use the word seek. Don't be afraid of the word seek. To seek out and obtain those experiences. Because it is difficult to put into words how powerful a mystical experience can be. They scale. And what I found is that there's virtually no ceiling to the potential and intensity of these experiences of oneness, of light, of void and nothingness, or powerful experiences of divine love. There is no upper limit. So I'm very hesitant to say, things like, this is all there is, this is nothing appearing as everything. I do think we are limiting ourselves in that way. But I do acknowledge the value and utility. whatever the word, whatever the phrase, don't let anyone else, including me, don't let anyone displace you as the master. Because this is not about me. This is not about any of us. This is about you. And not just you, my general audience, which is still fairly small, but maybe that's a good thing. This is not about an audience. This is not about me. This is about you in particular. It's not about what I think. It's all about what you think and what is relevant and reasonable from your eyes and from your perception. Because every individual is a reality of their own and a dimension of their own. The timeless, deathless, non-conceptual, all-loving spirit runs straight through you. There is nothing that I can tell you that you don't already know. Not even a whisper. It's all in you. Ramana Maharshi said, your own self-realization is the greatest service you can render the world. So what are you waiting for?